Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So, well, the weather, it's a little cloudy. We've had some drizzly rain off and on this afternoon. Nothing really that big of a deal. But in other news in the world, this conflict between Pakistan and India seems to be actually heating up quite a bit. Maybe it won't be just a little, spat between them. I don't know. Pakistan is making statements that this is an all-out war, and it started this afternoon. That yesterday was just some stuff, but the war has started, and that they're all in it. I don't know. It looks pretty serious. The Fed came out today and did nothing with the interest rates. There was a lot of speculation they were going to lower rates, but they didn't. They left everything unchanged. And then word on the street is that President Trump has some new big deal on Medicaid, Medicare prescription plans, and it's going to just rock the world. I don't know. I mean, I know that they were saying that in the last few days, pharmaceutical companies have been sending boatloads of their lobbyists to Washington, saying that whatever they're doing, it's going to cost them lots and lots of money, which I'm certainly not going to be upset over that. But all that and much more stuff, they're trying to figure out a new pope. Russia's trying to do a 3-day ceasefire so that they can have their little Victory Day celebration. A bunch of world leaders are there in Moscow. Ukraine has given some thinly veiled threats that they may try to do something during that time. Who knows? We live in clown world now. There's always some type of chaotic mess. It's all part of the plan. It's all to keep everyone distracted, while they're actually probably doing things behind the scenes far, far worse than any of this. Just probably things that we can't even dream of. But what I wanted to talk to you today is something that I like to bring up from every now and then, because I know, I'm a people, I'm a human, and I know how I am, and I've been a prepper for years. I grew up kind of that way. I grew up, farming and self-sufficient and all that kind of stuff, and I've been doing this pretty hardcore for years, and I am certainly in no way perfect. If there's any of you watching right now and you think, man, that YouTube guy, he must have it all together, I bet he is the most prepared person, I bet he's got, that's not true. Not true at all. I'm out here struggling just like the rest of you, trying to make it work and make it happen. And I know how I am and how many other people I've talked to are. A lot of times we forget things. It's not that we don't know it, we get busy. And we forget kind of the small stuff. And in my experience, especially working as a first responder, working as a disaster response kind of guy, all that kind of stuff, what I find is that a lot of times it's the simple things that really throws you off. If you go into an emergency, a disaster, whether it's small, big, national, worldwide, whatever, if those first few steps aren't correct, if the first few things that you need you don't have, it can throw things off. And so as much as we want to talk and think and dream about all these grand preparedness plans and things that we need, everybody's wanting a big $1 million bunker and a boatload of ammo and all the cool gadgets to go along with your guns and the perfect homestead and a great food production process and everything. A lot of times it's the small stuff, and we cannot forget that. We can't forget, and looking ahead at what's going on, sometimes it's the small stuff that's going to be the most necessary. For instance, how many of you can leave a comment if you want. If you don't want to for operational security, that's fine. Just answer in your own head. How many of you have things in your vehicles that can keep you prepared? You have a get home bag, you have maybe a little bit of water, a little bit of food, some blankets, first aid kit. How many of you carry that in your vehicle, like in all of your vehicles, that it just stays there? And it's not this thing of like, well, I'm going somewhere, I got to remember to put my stuff in, that it just stays there. Because if it's this thing that it's in and out, it's eventually going to be out and forgotten, right? And it should be something that it's stuff that you don't need to use. What I have found in the past, long ago, you know, you have that stuff, and then every once in a while you need something, so you go out there and you take it out of it, and then you don't put it back, and then if you ever really needed it, it's not there. So having stuff in your vehicle, we're mobile people, we're always in our vehicles, a lot of us, and so having something in your vehicle. A get home plan, not just the stuff, but a get home plan. Odds are that a decent amount of you, if something happened tomorrow, catastrophic, we got nuked, massive solar flare, EMP, cyber attack, terrorist attack. If something, a big event happened that affected either the whole country, the whole world, or even a good area in your region, whatever it is, there's pretty good odds that a lot of you aren't going to be home. You're going to be at work, at school, at the store, whatever. So what is your plan to get home? I mean, most of us go to the same similar places all the time. Work, school, like I just said, stores. Most people shop at the same stores. Church, family, friends, things like that. We're going to the same places all the time, right? Do you have a plan for that routine? Do you know how to get home if something happens? Alternative routes? What would you do if you can't drive your vehicle for whatever reason? So now you're on foot. Safe ways to get out of there, alternative route, all that. You have a plan for that, because you probably should. You have a plan as a family. So if there's several of you, to do that. So if let's say the husband and wife both work outside the home, and they work at different places. Maybe there's a child that's in college, okay? So let's just use that scenario. So you got 3 people in 3 different places, and something happens. How do you coordinate getting home? What if the comms are down? Maybe you can't use a cell phone. What if your vehicles are down? You have to come up with plans for every different scenario. How are you going to get home? What's the direct route? Maybe it's just the husband's off at work and the wife's at home, or vice versa, whatever. Do both parties know the way that you're going to come home? This is the route that I normally take. This is route B, that I would take in my vehicle. And then these are the routes that I would take if I was on foot. And that way they know, because if they needed to come look for you, they know probably the way you come home. Do you have a plan for that? I mentioned comms. Do you have a plan for comms? Because if your plan for comms is using your cell phone, that ain't a plan at all. I mean, cell phones stop working all the time as it is now. They go down, signals aren't strong, overloaded, the cell tower, is not working, so they have to go out and repair it. That's common now. You do realize that when it hits the fan, even if hitting the fan isn't directly attacked at cell phones, just the fact that everyone's going to be getting on them is going to overload the system. In fact, the American cellular system is set up that if you are like an emergency first responder, if you can have your account, mine's set up that way. My account is set up because of my rank and what I do, that in times of emergency, if I try to make a phone call and let's say the cell tower is overwhelmed, it will kick other people off to free up space so that I can use it. And so that's going to happen. So even in the not horrible situations, your cell phone's worthless. So don't depend on that. So what are your other plans? Do you have radio communications? This kind of stuff. Do you have these? These in your vehicle. Other stuff. Maybe radios isn't the thing. Maybe, who knows? Smoke signals, passenger carrier pigeons. I don't know. There's all kinds of options out there. You have a plan for that. How to communicate. You probably should. Do you have a plan on how to secure yourself in your home? A lot of people talk about bugging out. I think buggying out is not a good idea in a lot of circumstances. Not all, but a lot of circumstances. I think it's very dangerous. And the media in Hollywood have hyped it up. And people just think you're just going to throw on your backpack and you're going to go walking out in the woods and everything's going to be okay. If you don't have a plan and a direction and time it correctly, you're going to be more dead. You're going to be dead faster, all right? So, I say with buggying out, there's only two ways to do it that's safe, and that's either you do it way ahead of time before anyone else is doing anything, or you wait until all the dust is settled, and that's going to take weeks, probably at least 3 months. I'd say a minimum of 90 days before then you bug out. So keep that in mind. You better have a plan of where to go, alternatives of how to get there, caches along the way to keep you moving if you can't get gas at gas pumps, and your tire blows out, all this kind of stuff. What if your car won't run because it's an EMP? I mean, there's all kinds of variables. But you need to have either that plan really solid, or you need to have a plan to lock yourself down where you're at. And depending on where you're at, it may not be as big a deal. If you live out like this, yes, security is important, but you may not have to lock yourself in the house. But if you live in the city, especially an apartment, or just in a regular house in the suburbs, you may need to fortify yourself. You better have a plan to do that. How you're going to stay alive, how you're going to eat, what the water you're going to have, all that kind of stuff. How you're going to stay warm if there's no electricity. I know I'm speaking of extremes, but let me just say this. When I am developing my plan and when I'm training, when I'm doing the things for prepping, I always do it to the most extreme that I can. Train, plan, prep, everything. And I figure if I'm getting close to being ready for those really extreme circumstances, then I'll be pretty good shape for the stuff that's less than those extreme circumstances. So I advise to always, plan. But your preparedness plan is, what if the world comes to an end, there's no electricity, there's no technology, whatever it is. Because if you push yourself to that level, then, stuff after that, you'll do all right. But you need to have a plan for this stuff, folks. And you need to be thinking about sometimes just the simplest stuff, your medical stuff. You need more than a boo-boo kit, some bandages. You need to have a way to diagnose, treat all sorts of illnesses, injuries. I talk about that often over on my locals channel. You can go sign up. There's a link down below. Some how-to stuff. There's a lot of things that people need to be thinking about. And don't forget the simple stuff. The simple basics. A lot of times we've done this for years. We're experts, right? We know what we're doing. We don't need to think about that. And then you're caught out away from home and you forgot that you took your little get-home bag out of your vehicle, and now you broke down, or it hit the fan and you don't have what you thought you had. Think about it. Don't forget the little things, because the little things can become very big if the situation is right, and if you haven't planned for the little things. So do that. The world's crazy. Probably should get on it pretty quickly, because we never know when things fall apart right around the next corner. I mean, it's always possible. Anything's on the table at this point, folks. Everything and anything. So it could get crazy. Maybe not, but it doesn't hurt to plan for it. Get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.